JB here, JB here. Hope everyone's doing on Sunday, Monday, August 18th, 327 on this fine Monday afternoon. Talk really quick about the market. Some names I'm looking at go from the S&P slightly in the red here. Actually was just tapped green for a second, back into the red. A very lackluster, quiet. I don't even know how to describe today's session. I mean, there's not much really going on to begin with outside this meeting about Ukraine and Russia, but and then ahead of where we got the Fed minutes Wednesday, which obviously can be very important, and then Jackson Hole on Friday. It starts Thursday, but the big headlining event will be 10 a.m. Friday morning. Jerome Powell is going to drop the mic, right? So uh, take a look at a SPY, a 0.27% trading, a 0.25% trading range today. I mean, you go and look at the candle, and this is like this is 60-minute candles, right? So if you pull up the 60-minute candles on the SPY, it's like today it's just very tight range. And so when you have tight ranges, it's sometimes it's yeah, I mean it could be good or bad, right? But when it's at highs here, you can say, okay, well, markets buyers are able to hold the levels, consolidation, and maybe this quiet consolidation sets things up for the next leg, especially ahead of what could possibly be a huge market moving catalyst on Friday. So take it all with a grain of salt. I was hoping, well, not hoping. Of course, I would love to see the market just slowly melt higher, but outside of that, you think if we can consolidate today and tomorrow, Fed minutes, nothing crazy. Maybe some hints that hey, a little more dovish spin than the market's kind of pricing in, and maybe that sets things up into Friday. And then if Powell can kind of just say his little farewell speech without too much hiccups. I put on a watch list this morning, right? And I think there's a couple scenarios for what could happen on Friday. And one of the scenarios, he just does the same old, paints the picture, Fed policy, and he's going to be talking about other things too. And then he doesn't do anything mind blowing in regards to like a secession plan, a possible resignation, or defiant, right? Like extremely hawkish, and he'd be like sticking his thumb in everybody's eye, whatever you want to call it, as he's going out, right? So hopefully none of that happens. And then then we get into a little seasonally weak September, October. So anyway, we'll see how things play out here today. So just remarkable trading range here. Yields are slightly higher, the dollar's slightly stronger. So nothing market moving. So with that being said, there's been decent moves today. I mean, solar names are resuming their rally from Friday. I don't know if there was some kind of like tax update. I didn't even see it. First Solar's at levels not seen since it's almost here 220. SolarEdge over 31. And then there's other names running, some bounce names, right? TTD finally getting somewhat of a bid. That's a name I don't know if I can even get my hands behind. So I probably stay away from that one. And then there's other names. So of course, first MDB, in lieu of adding those weekly strikes on Friday, I got strikes this week, and it's already paid dividends, right? You had that city upgrading the stock by $10, so nothing crazy, but it was from a $395 price up to 405. Mind you, the stock opened at was a 218 stock heading into the weekend, so that's a substantial price target. And that, to me, it just needed a little kick in the butt. And you start looking at the chart, and I drew this trend line over the weekend, and I think once it got over that that trend line, which would be a break from downtrend to uptrend, I think there's an opportunity here for multi-day move. And unfortunately, the 200-day moving average sitting there right at 231.05, and we came up to 231.55 today. So sometimes those moving averages work out. Hopefully, get a continuation here tomorrow, and I think it trades north to 240. So I was able to lock some of my calls in for over 100%, and did I take two stages out, and then some more out for over 400%. I just held 300%, and I just held the rest. I used some of the profits to go and get some higher strikes, just because inexpensive higher strikes, because MDB does this, right? So if it's up another 3, 4, 5% tomorrow, the 240, excuse me, I'm stuttering here. The 250 strikes are going to be a couple bucks, and if that's the case right now, they're inexpensive on a risk reward basis. And if you look at the chart too, I was looking at some of the rationale today when I was getting out of some of those 230s and trying to figure out if I should add some higher strikes. As I look at the chart, and in the back of my head, I said, would I add some more calls if I didn't have a position on right now? And the answer is yes. So went and got some more of those strikes. Those are using some of the profits from the 230. So obviously, it takes some of the risk element out, but I'm I wouldn't say convicted, but I think there's a high probability those will pay out. So that's why I got those. I'll continue to hold those. And that's MDB. And hopefully it closes here. I mean, it'd be nice to see it over its 200-day moving average in the next 28 minutes. I don't know if we'll get that. The thing with MDB too, it's very volatile. So it's surprising. I wouldn't say surprising. It wouldn't have surprised me to see some swings, right? A couple dollars down, a couple dollars up, and it's been very tight on the way up. And as it's holding the trading range here, it's been tight. So I think that all bodes well. All right, so that's MDB. And then LULU, finally, staring at levels we haven't seen since Wednesday overnight session, right? Last Wednesday, the stock was 205 in the after overnight session, and that was the last it saw of those levels until today, right? So a nice run up in the morning, then finally took off into the 205 handle, then all the way up near 207 just at 2 o'clock. And now it's doing its Lululemon thing where it's pulling back about almost $3 pull to the downside. So I used the move to close some more by 215s that I added last week for over 150%. And then I took some of my 230s for the following week off for some profits. Now I was waiting. The premiums weren't coming up as much as I thought they should on the 230s. Typically, that's a sign for me to take some off, at least to cover some costs. So I did that, and I'll just continue to hold both. Similar, you look at the chart on here, and I think it heads up to its 50-day moving average, and that's a 224. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen this week, but it's another one of those names, oversold, a name that's on everybody's radar or a lot of people's radar, and the people it's not. Once it starts to move, I think there'll be more people playing for some FOMO. And it's like it's a name that you look at, it can go to 250 next week, and I don't think it would surprise people. People would say, oh, it's overvalued at 250 or whatever. So that's kind of the thought process there. So that's LULU. And Align finally got some strikes here. It was up at 144, 145, and chopping around. I didn't want to be in a spot where I miss the continuation and break. And I think I have to go look what the highs were from last Wednesday, but I think it was 146 and change. So that's the big key breakout spot. And then you look, you got a tight Bowley break. And then you also have some gap fills. And, call me crazy. I don't think it's going up to 175 anytime soon, but I do, similar to Lulu. I think there's an opportunity for this to have a nice bounce. And most times, so the last time I trade, I try to do the weekly strikes, but it's not the most liquid name, right? It doesn't trade too crazy in regards to ups and downs recently. And the good thing is because of that, it does, once it gets some buyers, close up 3-4%, almost as if someone just has to breathe on it and happens. So on the flip side, it can go the other direction. So I wanted to give myself some time as opposed to trying to get the weekly strikes. So I went and got next week's strikes. Continue like that one for upside. And I always talk about the Align, like the magical hand in the line. There always and it always has a buyback authorization, and they're always buying back shares. And it always seems that there's some time frame, and it happens pretty rapidly, that all of a sudden you look back at the chart and say, wow, Align was $144 on XX date, and it's $160 now, and there was no news or catalyst, and it'll just because, in my opinion, the buyback machine comes on. So hopefully that kicks in soon. They hit the button, and that takes off. Just some other names too. VKTX, I'm still trying to wrap my head around getting some positions. I was looking at the weekly strikes, which are actually red despite the 4% move here today. What are they now? The 60. So to me, I'm looking at $60 strikes. I mean, that sounds crazy when the stock's at 41.80, but with their oral GLP-1 data out any day, any minute, any day now, any week, any month, by all means, it could be out by December 31st. But if the data's, it's got to me, it's going to be monster data, right? Well above expectations, best in class, low adverse effects, little to none. And if that happens, I mean, I think best scenario, well, one scenario, it's like $65-$70, right? If it's blowout report, crazy stuff, then maybe it gets back to 90 and 100. To me, it's just like, I would have thought, considering where the stock has been, the data that's been out, and it's like the stuff's out there. So I don't know how much surprise element there is in their data. I think it's going to head higher. So for me, it's tough for me to go out and get to September strikes for $3 because I don't want to put that much risk on a name that even maybe if they do have a decent data and it goes at $60, my call's gonna be flat, or maybe they'll be slightly green. So I'm just trying to get the risk reward skewed in my favor. So one scenario, and I was talking about this a couple of weeks ago, is I'll just get the weekly strikes and hopefully it melts higher into the data. And if that's the case, then I'll just lock some in as the week goes on and cover costs and then ride them into Friday and rinse and repeat. going on. That's one scenario. The other scenario is maybe I'll get a closer strike like the September 5s. Those are $2. So if you go out 2 weeks later, September 19th, they're 330. So you're saving 50% for how many days is that? 32 days. So 40, yeah, exactly 2 weeks less to, of data possibly coming out. So that would be another scenario, but I'm probably just going to sit on my hands right now. All right, so that's VKTX. And the other thing is I know a lot of folks in it too. So I'm hoping it goes to the moon. I'll be happy if it does. I'll be a little upset that I missed it, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around. All right, so that's other names too. Reddit finally did its Reddit thing, just like Lulu's doing right now. A pull from the highs. I was watching it this morning. I'm like, oh, I forgot to put this on the watch list again. Goes all the way up to was it 260, 261? I didn't even pull the highs. Oh, 254 at the open. And then within 2 hours, it's all the way down to 238. So I would love to say I would try and buy the dip here. I'll just be patient. You look at the chart. I mean, just a monster chart on Reddit. So Robotics had news today. They acquired some company that does AI for I don't know, mapping, things like that. I have to go exactly. The news came out. By the time the news came out, I couldn't even I didn't see it come out. And then by the time I saw it come out, I'm just trying to figure out. I just saw the headline. Also, looks like NVIDIA celebrated 2 million robot programming. What do they have? 2 million developers embracing robotics. And then Serve Robotics is one of like the 5 company brands that they put in that press release. So any exposure is good exposure, especially when coupled with NVIDIA, but not going to change any positions there. I mean, so had some of those August strikes, so now I'll just continue to hold the later dated ones. And then 2 other names here. Target reports earnings Wednesday before the open. I was looking at some calls at the open, and then sure enough, it takes off all the way up to 206, and then it's down here. Excuse me, 106, and it's all the way down here at 105. And then I start looking at the calls, and for me, the risk reward, I'd have to go out to the 120s. And if you look at the premiums today, they're actually flat. Well, actually up 10%, so like 5 cents. I mean, that's not the kind of premium build I want to see ahead of earnings, so I'll be patient. Maybe I'll visit tomorrow and try and do it as a flip. But the flips are typically not my forte either. But I wouldn't be surprised to see a trade up near 120. I don't have as much conviction to add some calls there. And then after the close today is Palo Alto, right? So they got destroyed on that. Well, I mean not destroyed, but it was that acquisition, right? Is it CrowdStrike or Palo Alto who did that acquisition? Well, anyway, could be a nice gap fill, right? You start looking 190. Again, another name I'm not going to trade for earnings, but definitely interesting. But they'll report after the close today. And outside of that, it's one of those days where I want to look at the cannabis name CGC in the green. I mean, it was looking better than it is right now. IIPR is kind of flat as a pancake here. Actually just dipped under 52 just a minute ago. Still hold the nose. I think their time to shine is still coming, despite last week's rally. Yeah, I'm trying. Joby, right? Joby back under $16 with authority, all the way down to 1566. Bounce it back again. I keep talking about this. At some point, maybe I'll look to reload. I thought 1495 before the earnings. Maybe if it gets down there. And Lemonade. That's the other one too, right? Look at Lemonade this morning at BMO Capital, maintained an underperform rating, and they raised their price target from like 23 to 45, something like that. It's just comical. It's like, when do you give up? When do they give up their bearish thesis? Like what is, what? And they probably don't. They just continue to raise their price target and keep their bearish rating. So I'm like, if you were bearish when it was at 23, and you had a sell target, whatever. So now you're underwater by 100%. It's like, it's just funny how that works. But anyway, so Lemonade is up 4% here today, right at $60. And you know what? The premiums are not as bad as they were last week when I traded the call. So, I mean, you start looking at 65s. I mean, they're only I say only, right? They're 50 cents. I look at Lemonade through a different lens than what probably the normal folks do. I look at 65 and people are like, you think it's going to be move 10% this week on no news or catalyst? I'm like, it could probably move more than that. I think it's one of those names that could be up 20% this week when nothing besides someone just starts a short squeeze, right? Some funds says, "Oh, I'm done." It's finally throw in a towel, say it's not going down, and then it just sparks it. So maybe tomorrow or Wednesday. All right, let's have a great day, folks. I'll be back. Rock and roll.